she said. Call your dad, like it was a joke, but my daughter was crying, tied to a tree in our own front yard. I dropped the grocery bags right there on the driveway. My little girl, Ava, was standing near the old oak tree by the sidewalk. Her hands were tied with a thick yellow rope. Not tight enough to hurt her skin, but tight enough to scare her. Her eyes were red. Her knees were dirty. And standing in front of her was Karen's son, Tyler, smiling like this was some kind of game. Karen stood on her porch with her arms crossed. She needs to learn boundaries, she shouted across the lawn. Your kind doesn't respect HOA rules. My kind. I walked slowly toward the tree. My heart was burning, but my voice stayed calm. Untie her, I said. Tyler laughed. My mom said she can't play on this side. This is HOA green space. I looked around. This was my front yard. I pay the mortgage. I cut the grass. I planted that tree, and Ava was born. Karen stepped off her porch and walked closer, heels clicking hard on the pavement. She crossed the invisible property line, Karen said. I told you people last month. No loitering near common areas. She's 7, I said, and rules don't have age limits. Ava sniffed. Daddy. I didn't do anything. That was the moment something inside me almost broke. But I didn't shout. I didn't touch Tyler. I just knelt down and untied the rope myself. Karen pulled out her phone. Don't touch him, she yelled. Tyler, step back. He's aggressive. Aggressive. I stood up slowly. You tied my daughter to a tree. She was trespassing, Karen snapped. And you're lucky I didn't call the police already. Call them, I said quietly. She smiled. That kind of smile that says she thinks she already won. Oh, I will. Tyler whispered something in her ear. She nodded and dialed. Within 10 minutes, a patrol car rolled down the street. Karen didn't waste a second. She ran toward the officers before they even stepped out. That man threatened my son, she shouted, pointing at me. He charged at him. My bow was just protecting HOA property. I looked at the officers. They looked at Ava, still shaking, still holding the rope. One of them frowned. Sir, did you threaten a minor? No, I said. I untied my daughter from a tree. Karen gasped like I had confessed to something terrible. See? He admits it. He assaulted my child. Assaulted? Ava grabbed my leg. Daddy didn't do anything. Karen cut her off. She's coached. They always coach their kids. One officer walked toward the tree. He picked up the rope from the grass. Who tied this? He asked. Tyler looked at his mom. Karen didn't blink. Kids play rough. It's normal. But he overreacted and scared my son. I felt every neighbor watching from their windows. The officer turned to me again. Sir, I need you to step aside while we sort this out. Karen folded her arms again, confident. That's when she said it. Call your dad, little girl, she told Ava with a cold laugh. Maybe he can teach you property law. Ava looked up at me. I nodded once. She wiped her tears and pressed the small button on her pink watch. Karen rolled her eyes. Oh please, who's she calling? Santa? The officer's radio suddenly crackled. He looked down at it. Then he looked at me. Sir, what's your full name? I told him. His face changed. Not scared. Not angry. Just alert. Karen noticed it too. What? What is it? Arrest him. The officer stepped back slightly. Ma'am, are you aware of who he is? She laughed. He's a renter. I checked. I didn't say a word. A black SUV turned the corner at the end of the street. Then another. Karen frowned. What is this? The patrol officer touched his earpiece. Yes, sir. They're here. Ava squeezed my hand. She wasn't crying anymore. Karen's smile started to fade as the SUV stopped right in front of our house. The first door opened. Boots hit the pavement, and Karen whispered, almost to herself, what did you just do? The first man who stepped out of the SUV didn't rush. He didn't shout. He just walked forward slowly, wearing jeans, a plain black shirt, and the kind of posture you don't learn in a gym. Karen tried to recover her voice. Excuse me. This is a private HOA street. He didn't even look at her. He looked at Ava. She ran to him. Daddy. The air changed. Karen blinked. Daddy. I thought. I stayed quiet. Yes. I was Ava's father, but not the one Karen thought she was mocking. The man standing in front of her was Ava's other dad. My brother, United States Army Delta Force. He knelt down and checked Ava's wrists. The rope marks were light, but visible. His jaw tightened just a little. He stood up and faced the officers. Who tied her? The question wasn't loud, but it carried weight. Karen stepped forward quickly. This is ridiculous. Kids were playing. He's trying to intimidate us with fake drama. The patrol officer cleared his throat. Ma'am, this situation just became federal. Karen laughed nervously. Federal? For playground behavior. My brother finally looked at her. You told my daughter to call her dad, he said calmly. So she did. Tyler stepped behind his mom. Karen's voice got sharp again. You can't scare me with costumes and SUVs. This is HOA property. We have rules. One of the men from the second SUV walked over to the oak tree. He studied the trunk. Then he looked at the small metal survey marker near the sidewalk. He tapped it with his boot. Property line is 4 feet inside, he said. Karen froze. No, that's HOA land. I reached into my back pocket and handed the patrol officer a folded document. Original land survey, sign, sealed. The officer scanned it quickly. Then he looked at Karen. Ma'am, this tree is fully on his property. Her face drained. That's impossible. I saw the map. You saw the HOA map, I said softly. Not the county one. Twist number 1. And it hit hard. Karen's hands started shaking, but she hid it by pointing at me again. Fine. Maybe the tree is yours. But he threatened my son. My brother took one slow step closer. You filed a police report last month too, he said. Karen's eyes widened. What? For suspicious activity, you reported him for sitting in his own driveway. The officer nodded slowly. Yes, that was you. I remembered that day. 3 squad cars. Neighbors staring. Ava crying inside the house. Karen had smiled from her porch then too. My brother continued, still calm. We reviewed that body cam footage. Karen's voice cracked. Reviewed. Who is we? He didn't answer directly. Instead, he pulled out his phone and tapped once. Across the street, my doorbell camera light blinked. Then the patrol officer's tablet buzzed. He looked down at the screen. The video was clear. Tyler dragging the rope from his garage. Karen standing beside him. Karen saying, tie her loose. Just enough to teach her. Silence fell over the street. Even the wind felt quiet. Karen shook her head fast. That's edited. That's fake. The officer looked at her slowly. Ma'am, this footage was uploaded automatically to a secure server 30 minutes ago. My brother added softly. Not one you can access. Tyler started crying now. Mom. Karen grabbed his shoulders. Don't say anything. But it was too late. Twist number 2. The officer stepped forward. Ma'am, placing a child in restraints without consent. That's unlawful detention. It was a game, she shouted. With rope. He replied. She looked around for support. Windows that once hid watching neighbors were now slightly open. Phones were visible. The second SUV door opened again. Another man stepped out. But this one wore a sheriff badge clipped casually to his belt. Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Karen's knees almost buckled. She whispered, you don't even live here. I finally spoke. I do. I pulled out my wallet and showed the deed copy. My name is on this land. Bought it 5 years ago. Before the HOA even expanded. Her mouth opened slowly. You told everyone you were renting. I shrugged. You assumed. The sheriff looked at her directly. Ma'am, we're going to need you to step away from the child. Her voice cracked fully now. You're arresting me? Over this? No. He said calmly. Over false reports, harassment, and impersonating HOA authority beyond legal limits. Tyler was pulled gently aside by another officer. Karen looked at me one last time. You planned this? I shook my head. No. I said quietly. You did. When you told my daughter to call her dad. Handcuffs clicked. Neighbors stepped outside now. Not whispering. Not hiding. Watching. Recording. Karen's final twist came when the patrol officer added one more line. Ma'am, the HOA board president requested a meeting tonight. She blinked through tears. Wide. He looked at me. Because he's sitting right there. All eyes turned toward my brother. And Karen realized. This wasn't just about a tree. This was about power she never actually had. Karen's face went pale. She whispered, staring at my brother like the world had just flipped upside down. You're not even on the neighborhood email list. My brother didn't smile. I don't need to be on the email list, he said. I own 3 properties in this block. Murmurs started spreading across the street. 3 properties? Karen shook her head fast. No, that's not possible. I've reviewed the ownership records. I finally spoke. You reviewed what you were given. She looked at me like I had betrayed her. For 5 years, I said calmly. You've been sending notices, fines, threats. You put fake violation stickers on cars. You told neighbors they couldn't paint their doors without your approval. That's HOA policy. No, my brother replied. That's intimidation. The sheriff stepped closer to Karen. Ma'am, you are not the HOA president. She froze. The street went silent again. I represent the board, she said weakly. Not according to state filings, the sheriff replied. Twist number 3. Karen had been acting like the head of the HOA for years. But legally, she wasn't even on the board anymore. I watched her hands shake. You were removed 18 months ago, the sheriff continued. For misuse of funds. Gasps came from 2 neighbors who had stepped closer. Karen turned red. That was a misunderstanding. It was documented, he said calmly. She looked around for someone to defend her. No one did. Ava was holding my hand tightly, but she wasn't scared anymore. She was watching. And I realized something. This wasn't just about today. This had been building for years. Karen took one desperate shot. He's lying, she said, pointing at my brother. You think because you bring men in black SUVs you can scare people? This is a family neighborhood. My brother looked around at the houses. Yes, he said. It is. Then he looked back at her. And you tied a child to a tree. Silence again. The sheriff signaled to one of the deputies. Karen's wrists were gently pulled behind her back. The metal sound of handcuffs echoed louder than it should have. Tyler started crying harder. Mom, I didn't mean. Karen snapped at him. Stop talking. That was the moment even the neighbors stopped feeling sorry for her. The deputy led her toward the patrol car, but before she reached it, a voice shouted from down the street. Wait. It was Mr. Halbrook, the real HOA president. He jogged awkwardly toward us, holding a folder under his arm. He looked nervous, sweaty. Officer, maybe this doesn't need to go that far, he said quickly. The sheriff studied him. Sir, are you aware she restrained a minor on private property? Halbrook avoided eye contact. It's complicated. My brother stepped forward slightly. No, he said. It's simple. Halbrook swallowed. Karen looked at him like he was her last lifeline. Tell them, she begged. Tell them I was enforcing community rules. Halbrook hesitated. Then he did something no one expected. He opened the folder. Inside were printed emails, financial records, complaint letters. He handed them directly to the sheriff. She's been sending unauthorized fines, he said quietly, keeping the money in a separate account. Karen's eyes widened in shock. You said we were partners. We were, Halbrook replied. Until you crossed a line. Twist number 4. Karen hadn't just been pretending to have power. She had been using it to collect money. From elderly couples. From new families. From people too scared to argue. The sheriff flipped through the documents slowly. This is fraud, he said flatly. Karen tried one last move. She forced me, she said, pointing at Halbrook now. He told me to handle collections. Halbrook stepped back. That's not true. The neighbors started whispering louder. Phones were raised higher. This wasn't just a street scene anymore. This was exposure. Karen looked at me again, her voice cracking. You did this. I shook my head. You did this when you decided you owned people. The deputy gently guided her into the back seat. The patrol car door closed. And just like that, the loudest person on the street was silent. But the story wasn't over. Halbrook turned toward my brother. You knew? He asked. My brother nodded once. We started looking into complaints 6 months ago. Halbrook looked confused. The sheriff answered this time. Multiple reports were filed with the county, anonymous. I didn't say anything, but I remember every fine Karen had taped to our door, every warning she had sent. Every time she told Ava she couldn't ride her bike near the sidewalk. My brother glanced at me briefly. He knew I had stayed quiet on purpose. Not because I was weak, but because I was waiting. Halbrook sighed deeply. The board is dissolving tonight. That made everyone freeze. What? One neighbor asked. The HOA will be restructured, Halbrook continued, under proper legal oversight. He looked at my brother. And yes, he will be interim chair. Murmurs turned into open shock. I saw it in their faces. The quiet dad, the renter, the guy who never argued. They never asked why. They just assumed. Karen had assumed too. That was her biggest mistake. Tyler was standing alone now, wiping his eyes. My brother walked over to him. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He crouched down. "Listen," he said softly, "you made a bad choice today. But you don't have to become your mother." Tyler nodded slowly, still crying. "Go inside," my brother said gently. A neighbor took Tyler by the hand and led him home. The street slowly started breathing again. The patrol car stayed. The SUVs didn't move. Ava tugged my shirt. "Is it over?" I knelt down and looked at her. "For now," I said, but I knew something she didn't. Karen wasn't just loud. She was desperate. And desperate people don't quit quietly. As the sun began to set, the neighborhood gathered in small groups, talking. Halbrook approached me carefully. "I owe you an apology," he said. "For what?" "For believing her." I looked at the oak tree. "It's not about me," I replied. "It's about kids feeling safe." He nodded slowly. "You're right." He hesitated. "There's more." I felt it. Another twist. "What?" I asked. Halbrook lowered his voice. "She tried to file for emergency eviction against you." My jaw tightened. "On what grounds?" "Non-compliance." "Claimed you refused inspections." I laughed quietly. "She never scheduled any. She submitted forged signatures." That hit different. "Forged?" The sheriff overheard. "That's another charge," he said calmly. The pieces kept stacking. And then the final blow of the evening came. A county vehicle turned onto the street. Not police. Not black SUVs. Building and zoning enforcement. One of the officials stepped out holding a clipboard. He walked straight to Halbrook. "Sir, we received multiple complaints about illegal HOA enforcement structures." Halbrook looked confused. "What structures?" The official pointed to Karen's yard. Specifically, the small white booth near her driveway. The one she called the security post. "Ma'am installed that without permit approval," the official said, "and blocked public sidewalk access." Neighbors gasped. That booth had been there for 2 years. She used it to stop delivery drivers, to question visitors, to act like she owned the road. The official shook his head. "It will be removed." Another layer fell. Karen hadn't just tied a child to a tree. She had built her own fake control tower. The patrol car engine started. Karen was being transported. As it rolled away, she pressed her face to the glass. Not angry now, just stunned, because for the first time, no one was listening to her. The street slowly emptied. Halbrook stayed behind. "We'll hold a public meeting tomorrow," he said. "Full transparency." My brother nodded. "Good." He turned to me once the others walked away. "You handled it right," he said quietly. "I wanted to lose it," I admitted. "I know." He looked at Ava playing near the tree again, like nothing had happened. "That's why you didn't." I exhaled slowly. "I didn't fight for this country," he added softly, "to watch my niece get tied to a tree on her own land." That line stayed in the air. It wasn't loud, but it hit hard. The sky turned orange. The rope still lay on the grass. I picked it up. For a second, I thought about keeping it as a reminder. But then I walked to the trash bin and dropped it inside. Because some things don't deserve memory. Ava ran back toward us. "Can I still play here?" she asked. I smiled. "Yes." My brother added, "This is your land." She looked up at the oak tree, and then she said something that made everything worth it. "Then I'm building a swing." I laughed. "Good." I said, "Make it strong." Because no one was ever tying her to anything again. The next morning, the street didn't feel the same. It felt lighter. Not quiet like before, but steady. Neighbors were outside early. Not watching from behind curtains this time. They were standing in driveways, talking openly. Some even came over with coffee like nothing had ever divided us. But everyone knew something had changed. The white security booth in Karen's yard was already marked with bright orange stickers from the county. Violation. Removal required. It looked smaller now. Funny how fake power shrinks when the truth shows up. By noon, news had spread across the entire neighborhood. Not rumors, facts, screenshots, official filings, the body cam footage from last month, the security video from yesterday. Karen wasn't just facing charges for unlawful detention and false reporting. Fraud investigations had started. The separate bank account she used for HOA fines was frozen. And here's the twist she never saw coming. Half the money she collected, it came from people she thought were too quiet to fight back. Retired veterans, single moms, An immigrant couple who barely spoke English. They weren't weak. They were just patient. That evening, the emergency HOA meeting took place right on the street. No closed doors. No private clubhouse. Folding chairs under the oak tree. My brother didn't stand in the center. He stood beside me. Halbrook cleared his throat. The HOA is officially suspended pending restructuring, he announced. All fines issued in the last 18 months are void. Gasps. Relief. Then applause. An elderly man raised his hand. Does that include the landscaping violations? Yes. Halbrook replied. And refunds will be processed. A woman from across the street spoke next. Who approved Karen to act like that? Silence. Halbrook looked down. I allowed her influence to go unchecked, he admitted. That's on me. That was the first honest thing anyone had said in months. My brother finally stepped forward. This community doesn't need fear to function, he said calmly. It needs fairness, no big speech. No drama, just truth. Then something unexpected happened. Tyler walked toward the tree. Alone. He looked nervous. He stopped in front of Ava. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Ava looked at him for a long second. Then she said, You scared me. I know. He kicked the grass. Mom said we had to protect the neighborhood. Ava shrugged. From what? He didn't answer. Because there wasn't an answer. My brother crouched beside them. Protecting something doesn't mean hurting people, he said gently. Tyler nodded. And that was the real lesson of the day. Not arrests. Not exposure. Not revenge. But correction. Karen spent 2 nights in custody before being released on bond. Word was she tried to blame everyone but herself, Halbrook, the sheriff, me, even Tyler. But the recordings didn't lie. The forged signatures didn't lie. The bank records didn't lie. And the biggest twist of all, the HOA expansion plan she pushed so hard for. The one that would have given her even more control. It was permanently rejected by the county after review. Her entire vision of control collapsed in less than 48 hours. A week later, workers came to remove the illegal booth from her yard. Neighbors watched quietly as it was lifted onto a truck. No cheering. No insults. Just closure. Ava's swing went up that same afternoon. Strong rope. Thick wooden seat. Hung from the highest safe branch of the oak tree. I tested it first. Then she climbed on. Higher. Higher. Her laugh filled the street, and no one told her to get off. As the sun started to set, my brother stood beside me one last time before heading back to base. You staying quiet still? He asked. Always, I reply. He smirked. You know you could have ended this months ago. I know. Why didn't you? I watched Ava swing. Because sometimes, I said slowly, people reveal themselves better when you let them talk. He nodded. Then he said something I'll never forget. Tower doesn't shout. It stands. That became the line neighbors repeated for weeks. Tower doesn't shout. It stands. Karen eventually sold her house. Not forced. Not dramatic. Just quiet. The for sale sign went up without warning. And one morning, she was gone. No goodbye. No final speech. Just an empty porch where she once stood like she owned the air. The new family that moved in, a young couple with a baby boy. First thing they did, they introduced themselves to everyone. No rules, no threats, just smiles. The HOA returned months later under new leadership, transparent policies, and open meetings. No secret fines, no fake authority, just structure. And chose. One evening, as Ava swung gently under the oak tree, she looked up at me and asked, Daddy, if someone tries to tie me again, what do I do? I knelt down beside her. You don't wait, I said softly. You stand. She smiled. I'll call Dad. I laughed. Yeah. I said, call Dad. But deep down, I knew something even stronger. She wouldn't need to, because this wasn't just about one street or one Karen. It was about a simple truth that never changes. You don't tell someone they don't belong on their own land, and you never, ever mistake silence for weakness.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories.